Welcome back here at Veil of Sound. And I have
Hello.
to and I have to say for everybody out there, when my dear friend Dan from Discipline PR told me that I would be able to talk to this wonderful woman on the other side of this conversation, I was a little starstruck.
Wow.
Because many of her songs, especially with a certain band that we might also touch upon, were the soundtrack to my youth. So I'm very, very, very happy to have Kira Roessler here on the show. And I won't name the band first of all, but Kira, thanks for joining.
You can name anything you want, but hey, Thorsten, it's so good to meet you and see you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. For everybody, there is a reason, and I hope that a lot of people have already heard it. Kira will be releasing, when this interview comes out in 5 days, she will be releasing her new record, Enigma, via Orc Music. We'll touch upon the record in just a moment, but of course, the first thing always here, the plug of the day. I want to plug a German punk, post-punk band that I love a lot. Fjord. They just released a new record out in March. It's similar, a little bit similar to what Converge did with not the records this year, but the two records before, All the Dusk and Us and all that stuff. So if you like that post-punkish side of Converge, then you will love Fjord. Kira,
Okay.
what are you gonna plug?
I'm going to plug, and you may hate this. Phoebe Bridgers is out there doing these pop up tours in these tiny towns in the US. And I hope you're out there supporting it as a concept because it's very DIY. I'm sorry, but even it doesn't matter how many people come to the show, it matters how she's doing this, which is to try to reach anyone in that town who's willing to just come down and get in line and go, and she's trying to get people up off their behinds and into the concert. So
Yeah.
I'm for it.
Would you say that this is also important because a lot of us forgot how cool it is to go to a concert during COVID?
Yes, I think, and again, she's picking towns that aren't the big cities where everybody always gets the gig. She's picking towns where bands just don't even bother to go.
Yeah.
And that I love that part because when I was in a certain band a long time ago, we would try to get to all the towns, all the small towns, all the college towns where kids were just stuck there and there wasn't a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, like, I come from a bigger city here in Germany, so we always had the big shows coming around. But if I imagine living in small town, maybe a little rural area, that is difficult. Like if
Yeah.
you have to drive 2 hours, 3 hours to a gig
You're
on a
not going to go
weekday,
to gigs.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I understand that completely. And not only because of a concert, more people should support Phoebe Bridges, but also because she's just a really, really talented musician.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
love
other
her.
thing.
I love her. Yes.
Kira, let's dive into Enigma. First question, which
Oh,
Enigma is to you the most enigmatic? The Bermuda Triangle, JFK staff, or the lost colony of Roanoke?
probably the Bermuda Triangle. I would say there's a certain mythology, a long-lasting mythology about this, where there's evidence that people put forward, and there's a real mystery that people have become superstitious about. And I find superstition interesting because I'm not a particularly superstitious person. So I'd probably go straight on into that area. But I think it's interesting when other people own these myths that
Yeah.
come around. So I would pick that.
Yeah, that's also interesting that you choose something which doesn't even have a reliable historical fact basis. No, it's so much
Not
superstition around that.
reliable.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
reliable.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Would you say that?
Anecdotal.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Would you say that in a certain sense, making music is also somehow enigmatic because you don't know what will come out at the end?
Absolutely. It's enigmatic in the sense that feelings are enigmatic. And I'm trying to express feelings and situations. And it's a fleeting thing, which I then am looking back at and trying to recapture uh, to present it as an emotional connection with the people that hear it.
Then let me ask about the songwriting process. As we said, it's very enigmatic. You don't know what happens, and then you try to recapture it. How do we have to envision you coming up with songs?
So a lot of times it starts with a phrase or a word, something very small that I find super interesting. Like the first single on Enigma, it's called "How Could You?"
Yeah,
it was just this thing I said when I was mad, right? I was angry, and I just said, how could you?
How could you eat the last piece of pizza?
Right. How could you do that to me, right? And then I just wrote that, and I went away from it, and then I came back to it when I was not angry, but I was interested in the drama of that statement and how I could expand the drama of that statement and really lean into the anger that created it and the hurt and the complexity of what happens in a conflict with someone else. So I tried to just dive into it, and there's this sort of mantra of how could you through it, not a lot of words. So first off, I need something to dig into, but then without a lot of words, I then pick up my bass and I feel emotionally that I'm in blank slate, and I just am trying to write a cool bass line. So in this case, it goes kind of jazzy. I don't know why. How Could You would go jazzy, right? It's just like something starts going jazzy and the words are kind of fitting. And so then I start adding layers, right? So I add the first bass line and the different parts, and then I add either the voice with a melody and some timing, or a second bass line with some rhythmic holes and interplay, right? I'm very into rhythm, so there's interplay with the voice coming in and with the second bass coming in. And then my brother comes along, Paul Roessler comes along, and he takes that second bass line and he converts it into a piano part, which has some bearing on the original bass to the second bass line, but also incorporates him as a piano player, his emotional charge to the music, him discovering chords that I didn't know I was playing in because I was playing two bass lines, right? And then singing. I was just making up chords without really thinking about them. So it's a very step-by-step process usually with me, and it almost always includes two basses. It does always include a voice. I don't know why. I don't think I'm a singer. I'm a bass player.
We'll come to that.
Okay.
But it's interesting that you describe it this way, because a lot of people usually say like either the lyrics come first or the music comes first. When I hear you, then it sounds like a kind of interplay, like an interdependence, like, okay.
Yes.
And then the rhythm of the words also, in a way, influence the rhythm of your bass?
No, I would say I write a bass line and then I look at the words and I say, do these fit? Like, can I try to sing along to it, and they may not fit, and then it doesn't become a song, or then it fits, and then I keep going on the next part. But I'm changing the words too. I need a shorter phrase. I need a little longer phrase, So it is very much a back and forth collaboration between me as lyricist and me as bass player.
Then, you also basically already answered my next question, which would be that the bass is still your go-to instrument. But how difficult was it for you to take up this role of, being an instrument performer on the one side and also lyricist, vocalist on the other? I remember your bandmate Des Cadena once said that it was really important for him to start a new band in which he then could also do this double role on stage. How difficult was it for you to pick that up?
So I had a band for 30 years called Dose. And that was really the transition.
Yeah, with somebody really unimportant called Mike.
Right. So in that band, as when I first started sort of being presented as a lead singer as well on some of the songs, right? And then he started sitting down on stage right behind me and while I was standing in front, so it very much started to feel like I was a lead singer and I was the lead performer, and I had to hop around and be interesting, right? So I had those experiences first in the context of a band where there was some encouragement in terms of that I should do this, but also some, honestly, some anti vocals. Like, he didn't want all the songs to have singing. He thought the instrumental songs were very, very important, and there's a lot of them. So for him, he didn't want it, that particular band to be a singing band. But when it came time, when I was writing songs, even then, well, I was trying to write instrumentals, and I have written a lot of instrumentals for that band. But I started to find that the songs that I was writing with included my lyrics, which included my emotion, my telling of the story. Something clicked that made me start doing it outside of DOS, and I started having a whole set of songs that I was creating, which weren't for DOS, but were for maybe another band or something else, right? So I just started having this library, because for me, it's all about the creation. I just started creating, and there are these, this big volume of works that finally Paul, my brother, said, you should put out a record. And he was attached to Kitten Robot Records, and therefore that was the label that put out the first solo records.
5 years ago, yes. Then I'm like, I have to get that off my chest. Will we ever get new DOS music?
Who knows? No, don't.
An enigmatic answer.
No, I was going to continue. I was going to say, DOS is not broken up per se. Honestly, there's no animosity. There is no. But as you probably know, Mike Watt is a very, very busy guy.
Yeah, I know that. Trying to get him for an interview a couple of years ago was a hell of a thing. Yeah.
And I am a very busy person. I work for a living, and I do music, and I have dogs, and I have a life. And so it's hard to imagine how that we would both be able to come back together and do that. But there's no reason why it couldn't happen someday.
So at least you don't say never. That's a good
right. Exactly.
When I listened to Enigma, I was fascinated by the way that it transported me to a certain environment. And for me, I will say which one it is, but I'll ask you first. Is the music that you release, and especially the music on Enigma, is it more of a club music, or is it more of a lounge music, a music like a real concert where people go to, especially for that, or is it the cool background lounge music that everybody then goes like?
You mean stylistically?
Yeah.
I certainly don't. I don't limit myself when I am writing to a particular style, right? So I feel like there are songs that may seem a little less grab your attention, but to my mind, they are all trying to create an emotion for you to connect to. And it doesn't matter if you just happen to turn your head and connect, or if you're already fully listening and connect. I just hope that there's a feeling that hits you in your stomach somewhere.
Certain kind of connection?
Yeah, that we connect emotionally some way. Even if your emotion is different than mine, that's okay. But that we connect somehow.
Yeah. But can you understand where I'm coming from? Because a lot of the songs are really, at first glance, a little loungy, very jazzy, very cool. And that's something that really grabbed me, because I don't want to say I was expecting something else, because I wasn't. I was not going into it with any expectation nowadays with music. But it has this certain kind of soundscape that is really, really cool. How do you arrive at that?
It is intimate. How's that word?
Yeah, definitely.
It's intimate. It's meant for, I mean, I've had concerts with Dose where you could hear a pin drop, where everybody was quiet because the songs are a little softer, because the two bass interplay is a little softer. There are holes, there are spaces. So in order to really connect, you might have to stop your conversation and lean into it. So, I mean, look, everybody knows I have a really strong rock and roll background, you know, but my playing has evolved because of Dose into something that can be perceived as jazz, because I like to leave holes and play with rhythms and do interplay. But the emotions behind them can be very strong and angry. And I have a protest song against America. I want a revolution. The emotions are unlimitedly angry and sad, and you know. So I feel like what I'm trying to say is still, come on, get off your ass.
Yeah,
feel this. And the way I'm saying it maybe is very intimate. But that's me. That's me. My emotion. I'm trying to bring it down to its essence, and so therefore it is an intimate thing. It's me talking to you.
That also shows in some of her lyrics. For example, one line that I really love for all its simplicity is basically the title phrase for Collapse, where you say like, collapse, all systems fail. So your record should not be taken lightly, in the sense that it's not just you talking about your personal life, but it's also a real socio-political comment on our day, right?
I wrote that about the COVID shutdown, right? I wrote that in that context. Yeah, everything in my life gets expressed. It's not. Sometimes it's very much something that maybe you haven't experienced.
Yeah.
I mean, but pain and loss and sadness and anger, these are all things we can relate to, whether or not it's about the certain thing I'm expressing. So I'm trying to really break it down into something very clear. Like all systems fail, right?
Yeah.
Like here we go. You thought that we had it all together.
Yeah, you thought that politicians had got their shit together. No, they don't.
I never thought that, but you might have.
No. It's just the way that I think that a lot of people think, you know.
Yeah.
And I have to say, having grown up in the 90s, there was a certain feeling as if politicians finally understood that they should be, at least to some degree, making politics for the people. But let's not get into politics, because otherwise I will never be allowed back in the States.
I live in America, for God's sake.
Yeah, but you are in it. I would like to go back there someday. And at the moment, I feel as if with new immigration law.
No, you don't want to come back here right now.
No.
It'll change again, but it changes very slowly.
Yes.
But that is one thing about the young people. I do feel like the youth in our country are very disheartened right now. So, and that's a good thing. Yeah,
on two ways. First of all, we'll bring political change, and usually when bad times are upon us, it produces really good music.
That's right. Tell your story, guys.
No, yeah, exactly. Is that also somewhat where you, and now let's, for all the stupid people who haven't gotten it yet, Kira was the bass player in Black Flag. So let's get the cat out of it. And is that also something where you see, like, nowadays, the similarities between back in the 70s, we had Watergate, we had you had Watergate, you had stupid presidents, and now you have the orange piece of shit. Do you see similarities?
Yeah, I think that more and more, I think the extremist views are what's driving it, right? Because news and media, right, they like drama, they like the big splashy stuff. So we have these very extreme views, and the truth is, most of us don't think in extremes. Most of us don't. We're kind of somewhere in the middle, right? But there's these very extremes, and you have to either jump on this platform or jump on that platform, or you're going to fall through. And I think that's what we've had in common is this idea that our politicians don't represent us. To be a president of this country, you can't be a good guy. It's because of the process is broken.
Yeah,
it's about money.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I think that it is all the same, and we are fighting the same fight. And my song that I wrote, my protest song, when somebody is putting together a compilation, it basically says, this is why we had punk rock. This is why, we had underground. This is why. This now is also why. But now it's the time for the kids to do this.
Definitely. Let's come back to you as the bass player. And there is something that I like about the way that you take up the instrument, because you use it in nearly every way you can. And there are some moments when you are able to create such delicate sounds on Enigma that sometimes I have a feeling as if the bass notes are like literally dripping out of my headphones, but only like ever so slightly. Is that something that nowadays comes natural to you, or is that really a process where you're like, okay, I want this sound and I have to work on finding
it? Dynamics tell a lot of the story, right? In order to express an emotion, you have to find the dynamics, which means you have to find the tiny sounds and you have to find the big bad bass. You have to find all of that, right? So if you listen on some good speakers, the bass is really big in places, and then I get very small in places because it tells a different feeling. It tells a different, so it's very much driven by my emotions and not by my calculation of what the bass sound will be. But because I've been playing a long time, I'm always looking for, when I just blank slate, I'm always looking for something kind of new. Right. So I want to make sure I'm not doing the same thing. Right. So there is a part of me that's just always looking for, how do I attack this differently? But there's only so many notes, it has to have dynamics. It has to have harmonies. It has to have darkness and light. It has to have all that. It's not a record if it doesn't go through some changes along the way.
And then there is this part that, as you said, sometimes the bass is really big, sometimes it's really delicate. Sometimes the whole song is very dense. Sometimes it's sparsely instrumented. How do you, I don't want to say no, but how do you feel, okay, this is enough or this needs a little more?
Well, I work with both my drummer, Dave Bach, who has a very wide capability and is also works with me to create the delicate moments when needed, so he doesn't just play rock and roll through it, right? He can. He's an excellent drummer. He tours with the Avengers. But he also gets out the brushes. He also will say, I want to swap out my snare drum. So I work with him when he's learning the song. I'm there on this record, especially. I'm there, and when Paul's writing his part, I am there, and we're talking about it. And we're talking about, well, here, let's let the vocals have some space. Let's not get too dense. That part seems too dense. So we're working with the instrumentation as we write our parts, so that once the parts are written, it naturally comes out kind of the way I had envisioned it, because they have gotten used to the sort of evolution of me, driving them in a direction.
And then is it only the connection on the musical level, or do you also then say, "Oh, wait, here at this point, I want to tell this particular story, so we might either turn it up, switch it down." Is that also then the case?
Sure, there will be like a bridge section which gets kind of big and loud,
Mhm.
or there will be or there will be a part where I stop playing. I'm leaving, a lot of space. Which, when the bass drops out of Cura music, it gets pretty delicate pretty fast, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
of
it
course.
so me leaving those spaces, and or me that the how could you even has a bass solo and a piano solo in it, which is the only song, I'll give you that hint, that has a bass solo in it. But because I don't particularly want to, I don't find that it's interesting to play a whole bunch of notes really fast. I don't find that interesting. I don't think it expresses anything. So I think leaving holes and spaces expresses a lot more.
And then there is this thing that musicians always say, but I think in some ways journalists have to ask it. Uh, this whole like for fans off thing. I thought about, okay, if I had to compare Enigma to musicians, I came up with two, and I would like to know what you think of them. I would say that the new record and your music in general is somewhere in the middle between Tom Waits and Fiona Apple.
Okay. Uh,
Would you take that as a
yeah,
compliment, or would you say like, nah, not at all?
of course I would take it as a compliment. These are people that listeners want to hear. It doesn't matter if I'm one of those listeners, right? It matters that you're mentioning people who have a set of people who would go to their shows, right? So that's it's a compliment, because these days, with so much music to choose from and nobody wanting to buy any records, the 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 gift is somehow to make yourself stand out amongst the masses, right? And those people do. Tom Waits says he has a very interesting voice. So, and both of them have great voices. So that feels like a compliment, because again, I'm not a singer, but I sing.
There is something, and that is good that you mentioned the vocals. Yes, you're not Tom, you're not Fiona. You have a certain laconic vocal style, if I may say so. Laconic in the sense of you're not pushing yourselves onto the listener. You take yourself back. Um, you've already indirectly said that, but is your singing now on your solo records for you a very different thing from, for example, what you did on DOS?
Well, yes, I think my singing has improved.
Definitely.
And,
Although it was never bad.
I have funny thing is, I think it has to do with the fact that I swim.
Okay.
I have my wind is bigger, right? My air is bigger, so that I don't have to work as hard to get to the notes anymore. I can, without pushing a lot of air, hit the notes I'm trying to hit a lot of times. And we also have, amazing tools. If I don't. And I'll be honest, sometimes I tune a note, on a record. There's no reason not to use the tools at our disposal. I'm a sound editor, remember?
We'll come to that. Yeah.
Okay. So, but my vocals, I feel much more comfortable in my skin as a vocalist than ever. Yeah.
And that's also something that I think is audible, that you feel comfortable with the voice.
But in DOS, I was also trying to do things like sing Billie Holiday. Like who's kidding who?
Yeah, and let's be honest, everybody who tries to do that, it is difficult. Right?
Yeah.
There is this thing that I think we should mention, and that is something that let's clear it out. You have worked with Black Flag on some of their, for me at least, to me, those records that you were on always stood out from the catalog. On some of their best records. Are you aware that in a certain way, you also were a very defining element of that sound? Because I mean, like they chucked out Chuck basically for you.
Well, they chucked out Chuck first, and then
Yes.
they needed to find someone new, and chose me. Um, Look, Chuck is one of my favorite bass players, but I did come to understand what it was that Greg was looking for. Like, so I feel like I had this sensibility about what he was trying to do. And Greg was very much pushing me in a direction with my bass. I did not create that sound. He writes the songs, he wants to create something new. And I am responding to that by giving him what he's asking for. I think I was very much a tool for him to use to create this sound. I had the capacity to do so. And I think he felt like he couldn't get Chuck to do that particular thing. But I understood it because Chuck is so particular of a kind of bass player that I did understand what it was that he felt he wasn't getting. So it was just a choice he was making, and everybody thought it had something to do with me, but I think it was Greg. I will always say, I had nothing to do with the changes. He wrote different kinds of songs. He wrote slower songs. He wanted to figure out how we could play so heavy that you would feel pushed against the back of the wall, right? So the heaviness was something that we just worked really hard at. And I understood there's this thing about just laying way back on the beat. Like Chuck is a galloper.
Yeah.
He's just a galloper, right? And there was something that Greg was asking for was sort of almost behind the beat, right? So the shift happened as a result of him asking for it, but I understood what he wanted and I worked really hard to do it. And I had the capacity, and that's why it sounded so different. I mean, yeah, he was changing the sound.
For everybody, I hope you noticed how simply, wonderfully Kira didn't just at one tiny moment mentioned her capacities. I would say skills, talent, a lot of that, because an idea can be as good as it wants, but if you don't have somebody who can do it. So I know,
Absolutely.
I like the humble answer, but I also want to point out you don't have to undersell yourself.
No. I mean, I think that because now I am doing this with Paul and Dave, and I am sort of driving them in a way, I understand that role. I mean, Greg's role, right? So I have put myself in a role now where I am having that same, like, let's make Dave play a way he doesn't normally play, or let's make Paul. I mean, poor Paul, he's not a bass player, and he's trying to be a second bass, and he constantly feels like, okay, so 1, 2, like we get down into, okay, 1, no, don't play on the 1, Paul, you're the 2. And it is mind-boggling. He's a pretty straightforward piano player, right? And my second bass lines especially are rhythmically bizarre on purpose. So he's had to really stretch his capabilities. And he has those skills, he has that capacity, but I now know what it's like to be the engineer. And I'm just pointing out that Greg was being the engineer at that time.
Has that, you now being the band leader, for lack of a better word, has that also at any point ever led to discussions between brother and sister, not band leader and musician? Like,
sure, and Dave,
I don't want to see you at Sunday dinner.
And Dave has said, why did I get in a band with 2 siblings? Sure. I mean, we have, of course, installed buttons in each other from the day I was born. So he can push my buttons better than anyone I know. I get upset. He gets upset. I think something's right. He thinks it's wrong. I remember this. He remembers that. We remember everything in our childhood totally differently.
Yeah, because the bigger brothers are always we. Yes. Um, I have two more questions before we come to the quickfire round, and those two questions are related to something that we have not discovered or not talked about yet. For everybody out there, I have the pleasure of talking to an Emmy Award winner, an Oscar Award.
I don't have any Oscar hardware. I was part of a team that won. I
yes,
didn't get the hardware.
Yeah, I get that, but I have to ask first. I know that you won the Oscar for Mad Max Fury Road for sound editing.
Yeah.
I can imagine what sound editing is, but looking up IMDb, they describe you as a dialogue editor. Can you explain what that particularly is?
Yes, everybody thinks that they just record it on the set and there's the dialogue, right? What do you have to do? But then you have to think about, what does the picture editor do when he or she does their part? Yeah. They take different takes and different scenes and different angles, and they chop them all up line by line into this mess that I get, where it sounds like right? It does not sound like a smooth scene. It sounds like you have picked sentences from 25 different buckets. So my job is to smooth out those transitions until they are completely unknowable. And every little problem that exists in the dialogue, where someone put a cup down on top of a line, or the mic dropped out, or anything, any problem, distortion, whatever. My job is to fix as many problems in the dialogue as I can before the mix. And if I can't, to record ADR, to record them replacing that dialogue and put it in sync to the mouth moving.
Yeah.
I also record all the background people. So everybody who's moving their lips, I'm touching.
Yeah.
Right? The extras don't talk.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So all of the extras have to be given presence.
Yeah.
So there's all of that. And then what we do in ADR, we add lines, we change lines. That's all driven by the director and his team. But I concentrate, it's a technical thing, on fixing problems that are inherent in the recording of the set. It was a difficult day that day. There's wind on there. There's a generator sound. A plane went overhead, and we're not supposed to be in an environment where planes even exist.
Right? Yeah, it's not. There is no planes in Game of Thrones.
Right. So there are innumerable problems that come to me that my job is to fix. So it is not a creative job, really. It's like a puzzle, almost. Like, how many things can I fix? How many pieces can I get to fit perfectly and fix perfectly, which are inherent in what they gave me to begin with.
Do you then also, for example, in a virtual surround sound, do you also then have to place the stuff?
The mixer will place the stuff, but my organization has to include, if something needs to be put somewhere, to put that line or those things there being emoted in a place where he can then find them. So organization is very important, so that I can hand it to him in a way, or she, that they can place them. But no, they do the actual placement in a theater-like environment, right? I'm not working in a theater-like environment until the final mix, where I go there and help them do their job, and I sit there and wait for someone to tell me to fix something or change something.
And can you guess how long it takes you to fix not a particularly bad or a particularly difficult and not a particularly easy one, so like an average thing? Can you say how long it takes you to edit a minute?
The funny thing is, I don't get to decide how long I have to do this. So there are shows that are very pressed for money, where they say you have to cut the whole movie in 2 weeks. Well, I'm not going to be able to go to the level of detail on that, right? Yeah. So I'm going to have a less good quality thing, but I've got to jam through it and do the best I can, right? So the next guy gives me 3 months to do this because it's a bigger budget film. Project Hail Mary, it was a months long project where we were working on the dialogue for all of that time with some temp mixes along the way. But then you have almost infinite time. So it takes me what they give me is really the answer, because there's always more problems than I can fix.
So how much time did you get for Game of Thrones?
So the episodes,
10 episodes that you did, right?
I did the 10 episodes. So the first 4 episodes were complete when I started working. And then we started mixing episode 1 while I was editing on episode 4. So that at that point, I had to just keep up with the fact that we were mixing and editing, right? So it's almost a week, but I have to get ADR from London from somebody else because all that was done there. I have to tell them what to record. I have to receive that. I have to organize that. I have to tell them what they have to do differently all in that week and get it all cut and mix whatever episode is mixing. So it was a crazy difficult project, that one, because they wanted movie quality. HBO is pretty famous for have very high expectations. It's kind of cool now these days that television shows have really ramped up the quality, and movie actors are involved and movie directors involved. But the sad thing is the budgets are not movie budgets. So those of us who are being squeezed are the technical people trying to do it in, at a lower budget, faster. So it's a tough time right now, but I think things will get better once they start admitting that those kinds of shows are like small movies. They are much different animal than an episode of Grey's Anatomy or something, right? It's very different.
Yeah. Don't remind me of that show. My ex-wife loved that, and I always hated it. I was like,
sorry.
No. There is this one. I only remember one thing on Grey's Anatomy, and I came in. My wife was watching, and I saw somebody who looked like a tree, and I was like, yeah, of course. No, sorry, no. Last question before we come to the quickfire round.
Okay.
And that is going back to Black Flag. Is it true that you changed your style of clothing because somebody thought you were a male?
No. Okay. Well, what happened was we did a photo shoot when we got a new drummer, when Bill was unceremoniously asked to go away, and a new drummer came along. We was doing a photo shoot, and I was a little bit dressed up. And Henry said, "Well, it would be really cool if you, like, for a whole tour, like, really dressed up, like, really really dudded up." And I said, "Well, if I had like a couple $100, I could go out and buy." Right, and they gave me $200, and I worked with my sister-in-law to develop sort of a persona, right? So it was all lace, and it was purple hair, and I was wearing high heels and makeup. It was totally different, right? That was all Henry's doing. Now, by the end of the tour, they hated me for doing it, but it was all their idea.
Yeah, if you go in on a joke, then you must accept the laughter's on you.
I'm a tomboy by nature, right? So the real me was the one who was looking like a male, I guess. But they didn't. In the end, it was a problem.
I still remember a friend of mine had a Black Flag poster on his wall, and I always looked at it and I was like, why do you stare at that poster so much? And it was a picture where you had your hair a little longer, and I don't know, the pose was like, it was you kneeling down, and he was always like, "If I ever met Kira, I'm in love." And I was like, okay.
Jeez,
I never thought it would happen with punk. band members, but okay. Yeah.
I didn't have to say a word.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to say a word. You would just have to pick up a bass and
And
look at him.
pose. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kira, thanks for all the details. Also, that little dive into punk history. But nobody leaves the Veil of Sound without going through the infamous quickfire round at the end. You get two
Okay.
alternatives. You have to choose, and I'll start with something we've already talked about: Game of Thrones. So you get to choose between two characters: Tyrion or Daenerys.
Tyrion.
Why?
Absolutely. Because Tyrion, the times in which he was trying to run the show, which was episode 9, I believe, the Blackwater battle, where he's half man rules. Like he gets finally some recognition and some people behind him. His goal was to do good things. His goal was actually positive, and also
Daenerys just wants to see the world burn.
And well, she had that advantage of the whole dragon thing, right? So she's kind of, Tyrion's the underdog, and also the blue microphone never got close to him, so I always had to work a lot harder on his dialogue.
Would you agree with me that the show was really good up to, I would always say, season 6, but 7 and 8, at least for me, especially 8, it somewhat ruined it?
I just like entertainment, so I'm kind of easy on it. So I didn't have a strong reaction to the later seasons. I just enjoyed it without a lot of editorializing.
Can you then, if you're not involved, can you still enjoy watching TV shows, movies, or do you like, colleague should have done this?
I can.
Okay, cool.
I can, but I can also do great work on things that are not good. What I've learned is I can do great work on anything, and I need to focus on that. And I also know that my perspective gets skewed.
That's what I want.
I get very attached, and I don't know if other people are going to like it. There have been lots of movies I thought were very good that people didn't like. But then there have been movies like Mad Max and Project Hail Mary that I knew were great. I knew people would love them. Although The Revenant won the Oscar over Fury Road. And do you think that's right? Today, looking back, shouldn't Fury Road have won over The Revenant?
Well, I mean, like, the historical background of The Revenant is cool, but I always hated one thing about The Revenant, and that was that everybody is talking about the bear scene. And it's reduced to that scene where there is the bear and nearly killing him and everything, and I was like, yeah, but there is like 180 more minutes.
Didn't you want the bear to kill him the whole time? I did.
Well, I mean, like, I like DiCaprio, so, but in this particular movie, I wouldn't have been sad if he had. Let's put it in a diplomatic way. Do you think
it should have gotten the best movie Oscar?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just like it's also like I say that Scorsese won the Oscar for best director for one of his weakest movies.
Right.
Yeah. If we're talking about Scorsese, Taxi Driver, I'm just making this up. Taxi Driver versus wait. The Irishman.
Taxi Driver
should be an easy one, right?
Classic. Absolutely.
Taxi Driver versus Mean Streets.
Taxi Driver still. Identification with the lead character.
Yeah, and I still say that is, for me, one of my top 5 movies of all time.
Yeah.
You've worked on Joker and Joker Folie à Deux.
Yeah.
Not asking about which work was more complicated. Which movie can you nowadays enjoy more?
I loved Joker 2. I was so shocked when people didn't love that movie. People could not suspend reality. I can. I thought it was amazing. I thought comparatively Joker 1 is a bit one note, whereas Joker 2 has different, every song goes to a totally different place, and I'm there for it, and I love Lady Gaga. So surprised the hell out of me. It was like the first week got a few bad reviews, and it was over.
Yeah. And there is something that I don't understand. I mean, like, what do you expect if a movie has Lady Gaga in it?
Well, and after Joker being so weird and crazy, what was he to do in the sequel but something weird and crazy?
Yeah. And so I just like that the movie is basically the movie is his character.
We all thought that it was the next logical step, those of us who were working on it. Yep.
So you still would enjoy Joker 2 more? Yeah.
I think so.
We've spoken about enigmas. And when I think about American music of the last 40 years, there is always one standout musician, Prince. Do you like his work as Prince, as Half Cat, or as the symbol more? Which one?
I'll say as Prince, but that was never an artist that I was totally engaged with.
But you understand the enigma thought behind it, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
So we're already diving into musicians. Two of your fellow bass players, you have to choose between Flea from the Chili Peppers and Les from Primus.
Les from Primus. More variation on his style of playing. I love Flea, but it's a little bit less variation and more straight on energy and fast and wild. Less intimacy, less emotional content.
But he doesn't play the trumpet. That is definitely a plus for Flea.
And there's more trumpet emotion than there is bass playing emotion, at least in the Chili Peppers. Now, outside of in his solo stuff, I think he's getting into some great, cool new stuff.
Yeah. We talked about old school hardcore punk, so I'll give you two old school punk bands. But I'm not giving you anything from New York, and I'm not giving you anything from LA. I'm giving you Millions of Dead Cops versus Die Kreuzen.
Die Kreuzen.
Good. I love that. And last but not least, I mean, like, it's clear your last name is German.
Yes.
Roessler.
Yes.
Do you speak any German?
I studied it in school, but what happened was I went to a Dutch island. I lived on a Dutch island. I was fluent in Dutch before. And when I started studying German, I started getting confused between the two because Dutch, there's a little bit of similarity, but there are very specific differences. And it was really, I was struggling with that a lot. German is more complicated of a language. Definitely. Yeah.
But you have to choose between, if you could go to a German-speaking country next, you get to choose between Germany, Austria, and Switzerland.
Germany, for sure.
Good answer. So I hope the next trip across the ocean is not just a holiday, but maybe also some tourism would be very fun.
I am, for the first time in a long time, I am open. The right thing, there's going to have to be like a miracle. Something's going to have to happen. I'm going to have to team up with somebody. Something's going to have to happen. But I am willing.
That's a good thing. Kira, thanks for all the interesting answers. Thanks for also the dive into history. And most of all, thanks for Enigma. I really like the record, out July 10th. So when this one is out in a couple of days. And thanks for your time.
Thank you for being interested in everything and allowing me to answer your amazing questions.
Kira, thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, you too. Take care of yourself. Bye.